Hi everyone, and welcome to our session, Female Investors, Preferences and Approach. I'd like to remind all attendees of the live discussion box on your right-hand side of the screen. Please submit any questions to us through this box. I'd now like to hand it over to our moderator, Christine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at this session. It's going to be a very exciting, special session, of course. Let me introduce myself before we begin. My name is Christine Aquino, and I'm from Bloomberg News. I lead the markets live coverage over there for Europe, and I am joined by a group of amazing women. Let me take the time to introduce them to everyone before we start our discussion. So I'm going to start with the one closest to me on my Zoom window, which would be Georgina Guy. She heads Brown Advisory's International Strategic Advisory capabilities. Georgie is a tax lawyer by background, and she works to help Brown Advisory's clients achieve their financial, estate, and philanthropic objectives. Up next is Patricia Asley, who is a senior relationship manager at Julius Baer. She looks after an international and diverse client base and spans 30 years of private wealth experience from New York to London. Patricia is also a member of Julius Baer's International Diversity and Inclusion Committee and is a founding partner of WLTH. And speaking of WLTH, we have Tamara Gillen, who is the founder of the WLTH Network. It unites and works with the UK's leading financial institutions to celebrate and support female wealth. Tamara is a native of New Zealand, and she founded and run 2 award-winning marketing agencies over the past 15 years. And last but not least is Gabrielle Branson. She is Deputy CEO of the Kleinbert Hambros Banking and Wealth Management Group. Gabby is responsible for the bank's regulatory relationships, and she leads multi-jurisdictional senior management teams that partner and oversee the business. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for panelists for joining us today, as well as our audience. So let's kick it off with the first question, which I think is something that everyone in this space is thinking about. How has pandemic uncertainty shifted the way that your clients are approaching investing and wealth management? Georgie, can we start with you?
Hi, thanks, Christine. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to you all. So I think from my perspective, there was obviously a financial element and financial impact of the COVID pandemic. But actually, one of the most overwhelming things for me was the amount of my clients who were struck by the fact that, this was a health issue. And it was really within that context that people began to think about their wealth in the context of their overall families and their overall plans, and who knew what, who is engaged with the process, who understood, who the wealth manager was, who understood how much was being invested, what the strategy was around it. And so actually for a lot of my families that I work with, it became a very inclusive process as people began to think about future generations and their spouses and their partners, and how to keep that all alive within the family.
Absolutely. I can imagine all this uncertainty is kind of something that brings family units together, especially when it comes to investing. Patricia, what about you? What have you observed in your role in dealing with your clients?
Thank you. Yeah, I totally echo what Georgina was saying. If you think about it, for the first time, for many of our clients, we are talking to them in their homes, in their living rooms, in their kitchens. And that brings together so many different members in the family. And it's almost forcing conversations of not just about wealth, but health and wealth. So you start to ask more about the other members of the family, whether it be the female stakeholders, whether it be the children, and then of course there is the vulnerable in the pandemic, the elderly parents, and that just leads into conversations that we have had but more having about wills and life insurance and inheritance and these types of questions, which have been maybe, I don't know, taboo for everyone in the house to talk. They're now becoming much more natural, and it's pushed to the fore.
Okay, yeah, definitely a lot more personal conversations I can imagine happen on kitchen tables rather than boardroom tables. Gabby, what about you? Are you observing the same amongst Brown's, Kleinbert's clients as well?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think, well, as Patricia said, I think it's having the family at home and having those closer conversations together with that sort of driver of the pandemic that makes everyone worry about their longevity, their health. What am I going to be leaving for the future generation? What really are the values I have? What am I looking for in my investment? And those kind of things have made people, I think, reconsider what they're after, short term, medium term, longer term, their succession planning. And as Georgie said, we've also seen some of the shorter term succession planning aspects. So people thinking, particularly in the UK, about possible changes in capital gains tax and therefore handing on money to future generations now rather than later. People seeing a bit of a tendency towards having short-term cash, so wanting to hold a couple of years of cash to cover expenditure, the unknown, that side of things. And we've also seen some, I suppose you probably call it what's an emotional bias, so action bias, people really keen to do something, a bit like when you're sitting in that traffic jam and you think, actually, I want to get round it. It might actually take you longer, but you feel the need to do something. And I think people have felt that desire to do something. There's so many unknowns, but yeah, it's fostered that sort of desire for movement, whether it's an adjustment in their investment profile, consideration of future generations, what they're looking at, and the longer term, and the desire also to give something back, because this is a pandemic, widespread impacts across all generations, all countries. It touches everything that people are interested in and value. So yeah, it's been really interesting.
Yeah, that certainly sounds at least like a silver lining, that people are taking a look at more at their values and letting that drive their approaches and their investments, rather than perhaps maybe a desire to grow their wealth, which is of course still important. But I would say it's good to see that there's also a values component now that's a little bit stronger than maybe it was before.
Yeah, and also,
Tamara, yes.
Sorry, no, I was going to say completely on that point. I think and it's not surprising, because we found in the Wealthy Her report last year that for women, the point of their wealth is to protect themselves, their family, their future safety. And as Georgie has said, the health crisis driven by health and concern has really pushed that to the fore and said this is an imperative. And I think, all of these wonderful women are actually partners of Wealthy Her and their organizations. But, we've been doing a lot over COVID together about, how should you be thinking about your investments? What should you put in place to protect yourself? And for those, many people know, I was in New Zealand trapped with my parents, but actually I'd come from doing a radio show about living wills, protecting. And in fact, I'd go upstairs and go, oh, we now need to put this into place. As Gabrielle, we actually need to action this. And actually they're tough, even if there's an imperative. Actually, they're quite tough conversations. My parents were a bit like, do you think we're dying? I'm like, no, but we're all together. We might be separated. Let's think about the family business, about what do you want in your living power? How do you want this to work? And so it's actually, even though there's the imperative, I think there is, and it's been brought to the fore, also having the experience. And I have to say, I personally found it quite hard, even though we had those factors, and was grateful for some of the tactics I was hearing from these guys about how to do it in action, because I think it's easier thought than done, but I think is something that is definitely, it's accelerating and an area where we can really support and help through that kind of, how do you approach these conversations?
Yeah, well, Tamara, let me ask you, because I know that Wealthy Her has done a lot of research into just the wealth industry in general and the trends that we've seen over the last few years. What has been different? So this is kind of, we're talking about how the pandemic has shifted things now, but what was it like before? And especially when it comes to the participation of female stakeholders in wealth conversations with their families, is now markedly different from what it was like before?
I think we, and I can only comment from the research perspective, and what we're seeing this year is, I think you're seeing a sharpening of actually concern about, well, if the point of our wealth is to protect us, our comfort, our future, our children, actually I think women are getting, have always been interested, but I think it's becoming even more so given everything that we have been facing, and we meaning all people very broadly. As Georgie said, I think women who and Patricia, women who haven't traditionally been a part of the conversation have stepped forward and said, I want to understand. We all need to understand. We all need to agree. We've definitely seen a shift in this year's initial data that says, the definition of, I think what is important to us definitely that view, as Gabrielle touched on, of giving back, and a broader definition of that in terms of actually in a duality, which could be local. So actually people are much more aware of their local communities, where they live, where they go. But equally, we're aware that it's a pandemic that's global. So how can I help globally, and what is my role if I wish to either be philanthropic, or also in terms of if I wish to do impact investing, how do I put that in the right place? And we've seen a lot of questions about that, and then some things around security, because there is a massive rise in cybersecurity. How can we better support and educate around that? And that's been a shift, again, all under that very common theme, but I just think it's sharpened with the crisis that we have faced and we continue to face.
Yeah, well, it's good. Yeah, you mentioned the theme of impact investing, because certainly, this space and sustainability in particular has been a theme that seems to have garnered a lot more attention and a success this year, again, for all the reasons that all of you mentioned, just this more of an emphasis on values-driven investing, and people really kind of thinking about the legacy that they want to leave to the next generation. Is that all what captures why in particular it's resonating among female investors in this environment, or is there more to it than that? Georgie, what do you think?
So I definitely think the purpose behind sustainable investing is what entices a lot of female investors in. I think it's also something that people generally feel more comfortable talking about and qualified to talk about, because we all can read the news, we can all see the wildfires in California, the fires that were in Australia, all of these things are happening around us. And actually it starts as a non-financial conversation, so it's not littered with jargon, it's not littered with a lot of other things. It is a real sort of personal values conversation, and that's a really, really nice and very important entry point for a lot of our clients, whether they're women or whether they're next gen. It's just a really good sort of safe space where everyone sort of feels that they can discuss and they can air their views. So I think it really does. I think the other thing is it's engaging for everyone who's an investor, because what people should not forget is you can still make a very good return through sustainable investments. So no longer are we sitting here and saying, well, you have to choose between doing good or making money. You can find a way through where your personal values, your personal purpose, good for the world generally, and a return can all be built into a portfolio.
Yeah. And Gabby, does this fit in with your clients' kind of greater desire to be thinking about their legacies as well and wanting to leave something good to the next generation, this theme of sustainability?
I think absolutely. What we're seeing with some of the younger generation, next gen coming through, they are more idealistic. I think they have a greater connection. You see it with the climate change, that social aspects coming through, Black Lives Matter, all these kind of things. They are the next gen sort of things they're grappling with, and they want to show a difference. And I think all of that adds pressure as well to what's going on, what our generation and the generations above us feel about things, and how they want to share their money and how it's doing good for the future. So you definitely see some of that coming through in the trends that we're now seeing. And it influences. So the younger generation have got more influence, and I think that's increased actually from having been at home with their families as well. The talks about succession, what are you going to do for the future, how people should be helping the world more generally. I mean, in our industry, we've obviously seen quite a lot of issues, bad publicity about high net worths and tax evasion, all those kind of things as well. And I think that's adding a bit of a moral push from the general public and people who have money, feeling the need to do something good with it to make themselves feel a bit better for it as well. And that next gen are pushing that. I think they're helping drive that through. And I mean, it's a slightly sweeping generalization, obviously, but the female clients, I think, have a greater tendency to look at the sustainability, the social return, as well as the financial return. And they look more probably at the longer term investments as well, rather than short-term reward. And I think that's partly where you get some of that ESG coming through, and a greater desire there, because you do need to be in it for a little bit longer. You don't get those short-term rewards maybe. So yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting overlap that we're seeing now with those generations that Georgie was commenting on. Yeah, it's an interesting time definitely to be involved in this, and you see the houses all moving with it as well, like the UBS news last week about driving their portfolios, and that's partly commercial and it's partly driven by our clients. That's what they want, that's what they're after, so we have to react and do our best to deliver that as well. So it's interesting.
Patricia, I know that same as Gabby, this is something that you've observed as well. The theme of sustainability resonates not only with female investors in particular, but the younger generation as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the trends that you've observed in this space? What sort of things are younger investors more interested in that maybe we haven't seen from previous generations?
Absolutely. Everything that the panel have said is spot on, and I look at our own sustainable offering mandate, and we have the majority of women clients in that, and actually I really wanted to I was fascinated, why is that? And a lot of the points have been touched already, that we are seeing women have traditionally been more looking for a nurturing role in society. They've been traditionally, whereas and when it came to investing, they have looked more at investing for the greater good, investing for the society, and of course themselves. Whereas with men, the male role has been kind of investing for fortune and power and influence, and so naturally they've gravitated to this segment. But what's even more interesting is that because there hasn't been such a huge amount of return, like Gabby said, and wealth there, you have not seen the same traditional finance, you haven't seen the attraction for men. So women are actually leading the way in the actual careers as well, and that is attracting more women. So you're finding women leading the ESG departments in JP Morgan, in Invesco, in all the different areas. And I think it's attracting, it's bringing career opportunities for women as well. In terms of the younger generation, what we've found is that if you look at just the millennials, I mean, millennials are in their late 30s, they can be 39. So we forget that. We often think of millennials as, much younger, but no offense to millennials, but it is that segment where they are coming into wealth. And what we're noticing about what they look for is, before they even invest, they will look at actually the institution. They will look at the firm and what are they doing from a social platform? What are they doing from an impact? Are they representing? Are they in a space where they are investing in this? And if they are, then they look at the secondary aspect. And so it's really important to them as not just an investment decision, but as a principle. And if you're a firm that isn't in this space, that isn't investing and going digital on your social platforms and demonstrating, you're not going to attract this level, this segment, this generation.
I think it's such a good point.
Yeah.
Such a good point. And I think also this generation says, if you're not doing it, we're not going to come and engage with you, and it is an absolute imperative. And we find that whether we're working with big consumer brands or that is an absolute imperative as we go forward. And we've also found, just to add a different lens, that for women, they've also broadened their definition of what sustainable or impact looks like. So it's those organizations or institutes that don't work against women. So in the supply chain or structurally, organizationally, they don't have good representation, as well as it's in categories that actually are either positive, having a positive impact, or those that are definitely not having any form of sort of negative broader impact on women and girls and society. So I think it's really interesting, that sort of, again, honing in on what that definition looks like for women.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is yeah, please, Patricia.
No, just sorry, there was one other thing, and to add to Tamara's comment, is that if you look at the baby boomers compared to, let's say, the millennials, the baby boomers, according to an Ernst & Young report, they look at investing in philanthropy. So they will invest in charitable investments or charities, whereas the millennials will actually want to do it themselves. They'll want to invest with companies and social impact. And so that's something quite specific. It's more of a change out of necessarily charities, as well as just investing in what they feel is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, though, given that it has gained so much traction just in the last few years, and particularly this year, of course, there seems to be this bandwagon among more traditional companies to kind of jump on it, right? But of course, that also comes with the risks that, perhaps some companies are doing it primarily as window dressing. And we have the issue of greenwashing, of course, which is something that has been highlighted recently. So yeah, are investors also more wary of this particular risk? Are they looking at companies and funds with a closer eye and giving them more scrutiny because of this? Georgie, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think that the real one of the things to remember is that sort of sustainable impact, ESG, whatever label you give it, is there on a spectrum. And that's a spectrum that the investor can be on. It's a spectrum that the house, the wealth manager can be on. And it really is a bit of a journey. And so for me, the most important thing to say to clients is, have a real conversation, explain where you are, explain what you think, and see whether your wealth manager can explain to you what your investments are, and why and where they might fall on that scale. And so if someone can have a discussion with you about something, it's my general rule in life, if someone can have a genuine discussion, authentic discussion with you, and actually show you your portfolio and show you things and explain to you why in their view this is sustainable, fine. It might not be quite where you want to be on that spectrum, but there is a discussion that is happening, and then you can be really robust and understand where you sit on that spectrum. And if you want to move forward, you have that conversation with your wealth manager. I want more, or I want slightly less, or I'm not quite comfortable with this. But if you don't scratch the surface, or you don't feel that you can scratch the surface, or a question is sort of batted away without a proper answer, then I think, my sort of the hairs would go up a bit on the back of my neck. So.
Yeah, is this something that you're observing from your clients as well? Just more questions and kind of greater scrutiny about really the underlying nature of these investments and avenues?
Yeah, definitely. We're seeing that. And I mean, there are sort of public things that people can look to. They can ask you, what are your PRI scores? Where do you sit? So there is sort of an official register. But I actually think sort of the communication and the discussion one-on-one is probably the best way.
Okay.
And we have, at Julius Baer, we sit down, we go through the process. We start with a universe of 70,000 companies, and then, it goes down into like the MSCI ESG, and then goes to 1,000 companies. And there you really must focus on those individual companies. And we go through the process with the clients, and they have a choice. Actually, they can choose for a certain size portfolio. They can actually make it bespoke and choose which companies they do or do not want to invest in. So getting down to that really personalized, customized level, they will see that it isn't a fake offering, a light offering.
Okay.
It's important as well that the companies and the people there, the advisors they're speaking to, also have an element of needing to educate our clients and the consumers more generally about what this is, because as Georgie just said, there's such a myriad of things you can invest in, and that the scale of where people want to be it can be quite different insofar as making a positive impact, or frankly even investing in current energy companies. Some people might find that appealing insofar as they're still doing possibly coal at one end, but there's a huge investment going on into that green side that might prove greater profitability, sustainability, environmental impact in the longer run. But when you first look at it, you might think, oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that. That's not what I'm looking for. So, and it's really, really difficult to compare those. There's no real standard for looking at these types of investments, which is why asking those questions and getting into the depths of what is this offering, what does it really mean, what is in this fund? What am I personally after? What drives me? What's important? I think is really, really key. And it's with us to make sure there's that understanding of what they're actually looking at, what they're really investing in, what they're going to get on the other side, so that you're not in a fund that you suddenly see on the front page of a paper as, I don't know, wiping out bits of the Amazon rainforest or whatever. And you think, oh my goodness, I thought that was a good investment, something that's really positive, and here I am cutting down the rainforest. So they need to have a good view of what's going on, and yeah, invest in it emotionally, I think, as well as intellectually.
So it sounds like both our clients and managers really need to be doing their homework a bit more and doing their own research when it comes to this space. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, on the subject of just the industry shifts as well, just in terms of responding to what we're seeing, the changes in the wealth space this year versus last year. Tamara, I know that you guys over at WLTH are currently in the middle of kind of collecting the data for this year. Are you seeing kind of early signs that the wealth and investment management industry is responding to the shift well? Are there measures that they're putting into place that are kind of responding to investors that are driven more by values, driven more by wanting to make an impact, especially compared to the last couple of years?
I mean, I think from our experience and working with partners like these guys, I think that we've seen a dramatic shift, like a real, you know, we did the research to kick off as a network. We said we want to understand what's right, what's wrong, how we change, how do we need to adapt what we do and how we do it and how we serve and engage women. We made changes together in each of their organizations, and we also started to think about what we needed to do more broadly in the industry as a collaborative collective. And I have seen such huge changes, I think, in terms of organizations saying that this is something that's really important to us. We really want to get behind it. We really want to put not only backing our female leaders, but actually putting in place some big, meaty, interesting initiatives to better engage and understand women. And as I said, we've done stuff with each of these members here on the panel with us today, and seeing just a shift. And I think even in organizations that were resistant, actually we've seen them say, yes, this is really positive, and this is a place that we need to go together. So I definitely think it's an industry on the move, which is, it needs to be, in terms of, as I said, we've just spent most of the session talking about what's happened as a result of COVID. Change needs to continue, but a lot was already happening. And I think what we're thinking about now is what really will make a difference as we project forward over the next year.
Okay. So for Georgie, Gabrielle, and Patricia, I want to ask you about your respective companies. What sort of measures are you seeing and changes that they're making in terms of responding to the shift in the investment landscape, and in particular, doing a better job of catering to female investors' preferences, the changing approaches? Georgie, let's start with you. What are you seeing in your own space?
So I think our focus as a firm, we've always been, you know, really passionate about education, and in a forum that is comfortable and friendly. There are no stupid questions. You know, anyone can ask anything. And I think actually, you know, creating that forum more and more, having it, you know, sometimes just with women, sometimes obviously with male portfolio managers, but having someone say, do you know what, you know, someone from the industry saying, do you know what, we are full of jargon. We are full of stuff that we have been doing for decades and for years. And, you know, we can speak a different language, but actually we're going to make this, you know, understandable to you. And it's our responsibility to do that. And if we don't do it, it is not your fault for not understanding. It is our fault for not explaining it clearly. So I think it is shifting that focus, which is our job is to make sure we are engaging our clients, female, next gen, male clients, you know, all our clients. And I think that education and working with women through that type of forum is really, really important.
Okay. What about you, Gabby? What are you observing from your approach at Kleinwort?
Well, I definitely agree with Georgie. This is a theme that's running for, I think, probably all the wealth managers and investment managers. Absolutely trying to work more with our clients across the whole spectrum, whether it's men, women, next gen, etc. And really, get to grips with what they're looking for, what they value, how we can support that, making sure that we provide those educational opportunities. And we are aware, and obviously Tamara's research into this has supported the idea that a lot of women would like more education. They feel, even when they're not, they feel that actually they're not experts in their area. And I have been known to say that myself, which can be quite amusing sometimes, where you think, oh no, I'm not a finance expert.
Yeah.
Probably relatively. So we can definitely take on those guises, and we absolutely have expert clients as well who are female. So it's a bit of a sweeping generalisation to say women tend to want more education, but it's definitely true. But it can come on a whole range of different spectrums. And what we really like to do is try and tackle the next gen, and also then add education at different levels, depending what people are after, whether it's on ESG and that type of investment, or more broadly. And as Georgie was saying, it's about feeling comfortable. You can ask what you feel might be a silly question. It's not going to be, because someone else will be thinking it. And it's one of those things that all of us, and I'm sure our audience will be well aware of as well. You sit at a meeting and you're thinking, gosh, I don't know what you're talking about, or I wonder what that is. And it's being brave enough to ask that, because then lots of people say, oh yeah, I was wondering that as well. So and that's what we want to do. You want to create that environment where everyone's happy to have that conversation, and you get that trust, and that's really key. And I don't think it matters whether people are doing that with Clive Hambros or Julius Baer or whoever. It's really going to drive the whole industry forwards if we can engage with half the population and make them feel comfortable in having that conversation. Whether that half is, they're not going to be all female, but there's going to be a lot of people who could do with that and really benefit and enjoy being included. And that's something that we found coming through quite strongly. So we said we'd like to run these programs, and then we had other people come in and say, oh yeah, I'd like to be part of that. We could really engage. Not female, that's not a problem. We're inclusive. So it's really fun. I really enjoy that sense of communicating and connecting, and actually you can help people to do something that they've really wanted to do but haven't previously maybe felt quite brave enough or quite comfortable enough to do. So I think there's lots to be done out there, and then it's about matching your managers. So we want the people they're talking to look like them in some ways as well, to improve our diversity, our inclusion as well. And wealth management, asset management, we're not so good on that side. Particularly at portfolio manager level, it's a little bit more unusual. So I think that's something else that's really helping. And on the ESG side, it is something that women have picked up and running with, and it's great to see. I'm really, really pleased about it.
Yeah. Patricia, I know that you spoke about this earlier, just the trend of more women leading the way on the ESG side. And is this something that you feel is very, very promising, both from the perspective of Julius Baer and on the industry as a whole?
Yes, I mean, we have already a senior woman in charge of the sustainability offering as well. And I think, look, it's one of the fastest growing industries now is women in wealth, and it is too big to ignore. And it's an exciting time. I think the industry, we're all in its beginning stages, quite honestly. I think there is so much more we can do. And it's great to be part of an organization who believes in it and who is partnering with associations like Wealthy Her and developing programs internally, because it's really important. Studies have shown from Ernst & Young that also from a business perspective, if from a relationship manager, if a woman is not, female client is not comfortable with either the relationship manager, the bank, or if they just don't trust the advice they're given, they move. They move much easier than male counterparts, male clients move. So the business needs to wake up and understand that. And at Julius Baer, we're doing quite a few programs for just like the others, you know, in terms of education and next gen, but also we're looking a lot at helping female entrepreneurs, females in starting businesses, and trying to link up with different organizations and help them in their wealth creation, because we know that this is going to be the future. They are going to be in a better position, and if we can help them in that beginning journey, there will be some loyalty, hopefully, and that will help them with managing their wealth. So from a bank perspective, yeah, we're doing great things. Could we do more? Hell yeah, we can do more, and we will. But I think, yeah, on the sustainability side, it's definitely catchy. There's just more career opportunities. There's more diversity in that side. So women are feeling more comfortable going into that segment of the business. And hopefully, and that's been more traditional. We're seeing the younger generation start to shift. They're not seeing it the same way that the baby boomers or the Generation X. And that's giving us hope.
Yeah, very helpful indeed. I mean, there is a question that I see here in our chat, and which was going to lead into my next question, of course, was, you know, lots of things to be hopeful about in the industry, and we are seeing that there is appetite for change. In terms of the numbers, of course, we're not quite there in terms of the industry actually representing or giving equal representation of male and female, as well as other sorts of diversity, like be it ethnic diversity or cultural diversity. So yeah, the question that one of our attendees in the audience is asking is essentially, yeah, is the industry, do you feel adequately representing the split of clients, and in particular giving female investors an environment where they can grow their wealth when it is primarily male dominated? Gabby, I know that diversity and inclusion, this is something that you are very passionate about, and something that you're watching as well. What can we do in this space? What is still the main barrier? There is an appetite for sure for more diversity and inclusion, but what is the main barrier beyond that? Why aren't we seeing the numbers as we should be seeing them?
Well, I think partly it's a limited talent pool. So we're all fishing in a small pot, and there are less women in this industry, unfortunately, coming through from the junior ranks. So when you look at, sorry, but sweeping our generation, there aren't that many of us to choose between. So there's definitely competition at senior banker, portfolio manager, senior portfolio manager level as well. So we need to develop that talent, and that's definitely a challenge for us. I mean, quite interestingly, when we're looking at our client and employee figures recently, we are across the business about 50% female, just less, it's probably 48, 52. But as you move up through the ranks, it drops off. So at the board level, we're about a third. And it's about a third at senior management level, so MD as well, within the wealth management. And that's actually pretty good. But if I look at our portfolio management team, the numbers are much, much lower. So actually that is a core skill where actually the number of women is much lower. Private bankers, we're about a third, just over. And interestingly, our client base is probably a third female as well. And actually, you think about the growth of female wealth and what's going to happen over the next few years, we know that's going to increase. So I think we need to shift through and bring in more talent, but actually we need to generate it internally. We can all steal it from each other, but that's not really helping us as women in our industry. So obviously it's very tempting. We really need to develop it, provide that inclusion to make people feel more confident that they can do it. And I think that's one of the things certainly when I went through school and university, finance wasn't one of those things that people immediately chose. You didn't get so many women doing economics or finance-focused MBAs or whatever it happens to be. And that's partly, it's being a little bit rectified as we go through, but we need to see more women coming into our world and actually getting comfortable with what they do and the fact they can do it and they are needed. And they bring very different skills. And we see that across management teams. It's a different world when you've got women in the room as well as men. You need a balance because and that it's really powerful that actually working together we can make a big difference. And that's what I see, and that's what we need to do. So we need to keep the women in the workforce, and we do have that drift out, unfortunately, as people move up. And unfortunately, part of it's obviously having families, but not all of it. People often do different things, and we need to encourage them to stay with us for the long term. It's a great journey, but it does have its moments, which obviously can be tough, and we need to be there to help people through them and mentor them, and really provide that support network, I think, across the industry.
Yeah, Georgie and Patricia, is talent, keeping it, nurturing it, sustaining it, something that is a challenge as well over at Brown and JB? Georgie, let's start with you.
So I think everyone is conscious about generally the lack of women in financial services, whether that's wealth management, banking, legal, accountancy. Certainly as you get more and more senior. I think that all the things that we have been talking about today not only will drive sort of the engagement with female investors, but I think will drive and help us recruit and solidify our relationship with future talent and existing talent. Because I think, understanding the purpose of the financial services within that sort of career context, it is going to be really important. And knowing, that you are going to a firm that has a robust, authentic, sustainable offering, it is really, engaged with that is a firm that supports and works with female clients and next gen clients. And, whatever it is that's next that becomes, the really important thing for future generations. If you have a dynamic and nimble business, then I think that is really the way that you will secure your future talent. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's tricky. It's not sort of necessarily the fashionable or natural area at the moment that people put their hand up and say, yeah, that's where I want to go. So we have to convince them of the good we're doing.
And Patricia, what are you seeing from your perch?
Well, diversity is good for business. I mean, the metrics support it. McKinsey says that diverse companies, truly diverse companies, come out of crisis much better. We're starting, again, like Abby said, it promotes creativity, problem solving, attracting, retaining talent. All those things are really good for a diverse workforce. And we are very lucky in lower, support levels and actually quite higher levels in senior management. And there is that little kind of segment where we can definitely improve in the relationship management, portfolio management. And we're not seeing the numbers of people, but we have to think differently. We have to look in different places. We have to go back and maybe look at younger talent. I mean, if you take just 22% of wealth managers are under the age of 40. The new talent coming in, the younger generations are needing to be dealt with differently. And we need maybe to bring up some of the younger women in the business. If we're not getting the applications or we're not looking in the right places, we need to somehow find a way, because we're going to have to represent our clients. And if our clients are going to demand this and want this and seek this, we're not going to do a service to them. So we must think about things differently. And we are, but it's a journey, like you all said, it's a journey. And I think we have to encourage women to apply for the jobs. And if they can't do it 100%, apply for the job still, because you will get to do it. And it's a little bit of an ad there, but it's important because I think sometimes women hold themselves back a bit because they want to be doing everything perfectly, because they don't want to let anybody down. And that's, I think we've seen that in some of Tamara's reports. And so, yeah, diversity is absolutely key for the future. And the new round of investors, clients, will not invest with us if they don't see that we're doing something about it.
Well, bringing this back to kind of a broader perspective, to Tamara, all the points that were brought up seems to be, it really is kind of a process of encouraging women throughout like various stages of their career. I know that your group does quite a bit of mentoring and just coaching as well. Is that something that you would advise women, whether they're trying to break into the industry as a career, or they're on the client side of things and trying to kind of engage with it so that they can grow their own wealth? Is that something that just having mentors, especially fellow female successful mentors, to help you along the way? Is that something that would really help a generation of women kind of leverage this wealth industry better, or break into it if that's something that they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is, as my favorite quote from Anya Highmarch, who we've worked with, and she says, "You're better than you think you are, and you know more than you think you do." And whereas a woman will say, I don't, whether they're going for a job or they're going for a career, the next level up, or they're going to pitch their business, women, we sometimes negotiate against ourselves, we undervalue ourselves against ourselves. So I think that women, again, you're better than you think you are, and really understand what value you bring to an organization that you work in, or a business that you are seeking to get investment or collaborate with, and hold the line on that. And so I think that actually some really successful women, from Anya Highmarch to Claire Balding, talking about that is something I have faced, and something I have to, whenever I've got one of those moments and I'm about to go, is almost, go into ask for people to tell me why I'm great, because it's much easier if someone else tells you than you as a woman who likes to be self-deprecating, particularly if you're a woman, and British, I always say it's the double whammy, so that when you say it, you're not saying it in your voice, you're saying it in people that you respect, who've given you those points of value. So I think that absolutely has a role. And then we need to also look, and I know, as I said, that these women are doing this in their organizations, to think differently and change cultures, because the biggest thing I think at the moment, and share learnings across the industry as we're doing now, because I think that when the going gets tough, people don't always make, and it's not always possible when there is tougher commercial environments, which everybody is facing now. It is harder to hold the line on your diversity and continuing to champion that. So I think that that's something that we need to be role models within organizations, and we need to really foster that, because trends show, and already through COVID, a mother is 47% more likely to have lost her job or quit than a father, and that's because of the double burden that women are playing. And I've seen that in top entrepreneurs, saying, look, I just need to focus on my business and my family, and it's survival, and that's all I've got time for right now. So I just think that stuff as we need to do. And so I do think these kind of voices of leadership, sharing learnings and insights across each other. I mean, I sat on, whilst preparing for this panel, and heard some of the great commercial success stories of some of the Julius Baer diverse teams in Asia, and how successful they've been. And I love those, and I write them down, because I think they're the proof points as to why diversity pays, and it matters, and it makes a difference to business. So I think whether you're talking about an individual or you're talking about an organization, us sharing the knowledge, the stories, the growth that protect female careers and paths, and also organizational development as well, in terms of how we build our teams and our businesses.
All right, lovely. Well, I have a few more questions, but I want to open the floor to a question from our viewers as well. So we have a question here again about Next Gen, which we spoke about earlier. They're definitely switched on. They're active contributors through philanthropy and impact investing, and they have a goal for social and environmental betterment. But the question is, how can we coach them better? I know there's a lot of enthusiasm with this generation, but maybe not as much focus. So how do we address that? Maybe Georgie, we can start with you.
How do we coach them better? I think that there are some sort of old rules of sort of financial investment, and I think it's about making sure that we use the new lens, the sustainability lens, but we also do insist on some financial rigor that goes behind the sustainability and the impact. So I think it's about listening and learning and understanding what is driving Next Gen, but also by showing and educating them about the financial elements of it, and mixing those two things together, and understanding the different impacts. So the difference in sustainable investing, impact investing, or philanthropy, they might all come from the same value proposition, but they all have completely different results, and can be done differently. So I think it's about us being flexible enough to listen and to learn, and also for Next Gen, they're very passionate about what they believe in, but also being willing to listen and to understand how that can be implemented, and how we've seen different passions and different values implemented, and marrying the two together.
And I just a point to add to that. I mean, I think it's, you know, my business is communications, and I've done that, you know, whether that's for Nike or, you know, I know talking to younger consumers, but in fact, we need to go where they are. And you know, I think of myself as quite current, but, you know, going to events with the next gen saying, you know, show me your Instagram. Why haven't you got that on Insta? And I'm like, I'm working in the field of financial education, but actually, and unleashing communication to go where they are so that you can coach or inform them in different ways, I think is absolutely critical. And also, I think also just putting a broader set of voices out. So we've had a lot of residents where some of the sort of younger, you know, partners within their organizations, they're younger people talking about, you know, where the smart investments are from a sustainability point of view. They are listening to them. So I think communication, I think, is really, really important, because if we can't reach them or get to them, we can't change the way that they behave or inform or educate them. So I think that that's a real innovation in finance, to sort of embrace channels where they are, but it needs to happen.
Yeah, very well said. I guess we all need to get Instagram accounts.
I'm terrified. I've got 5 pictures up there. I'm going to change it.
Gabby, what do you think from your perspective?
No, I completely agree, and it's one of our focuses, trying to improve our digital presence and those kind of things. And it's not natural to some of us, and I think we admit that, but it doesn't mean we don't need to do it. And I think if we want to get that next gen and the educational piece and the understanding running through, we've got to be there. And actually, it's interesting, through the pandemic, the way we've changed and adapted in the last 6 months. I mean, goodness. I don't know how many years, but it's certainly a 2-year leap forward, probably far more than that we've managed to take. When we first went into lockdown and everyone had to move to working from home, the idea of trying to get the trading desk up and running from home was a major step forward, let alone how you sign agreements or communicate or talk to clients. And yet now, here we are, everyone's working from home, and we have video conferences with clients or prospects. We can do their ID on over the video or whatever. These are things that, from our business, 6 months ago were just sort of futuristic. We weren't anywhere near it. So actually, we have moved a long way in that communication, the way we can do things. And I think that helps align us with that next gen coming through as well, because we were a little bit old and creaky maybe in our approach to things. And it's a different way of thinking. And I think having younger staff members coming through really helps as well, because they think in a different way. They have different solutions to the problems that the way we think about things. And oh, well, why don't you just do this? And it's quite interesting to think, oh yeah, no, I wish I thought of that. And it's that kind of thinking, I think, that will help us push through and connect to the next generation of clients, or of people across the business as well. And we need to use our talent internally to help us with that and make those connections. We can't rely on our generation to do that. It's got to be a collaborative effort, I think. And we're trying to run some next gen education, so for clients, children of clients, etc., and make sure they have a fundamental understanding of how things work. Going back to Georgie's point, they need to learn what they don't know as well, so then they can mix them together. As Patricia was talking about, it really works if you've got a fundamental understanding of how finance works, plus your belief system and what you're trying to do. And to me, that's the important bit. The 2 parts together is how we should make it a positive experience for everyone. Yeah, I'm really keen to sort of try and assist and help with that. Yeah.
And Patricia, thoughts on this?
Yeah, echo everything. And just to add, maybe, you know, look at the organization you're dealing with, see what programs they're doing. So, you know, as an organization, we're doing some really good work in social mobility and good work for the community and employing and looking at different schools and getting young talent that way. And I think if you're going to be looking at investing in those companies, invest in the company with who you're dealing with. And I think if they put their money where their mouth is, you know, that's a really, it's a good start. You know, we're also trying to do programs. We've initiated some reverse mentoring programs. So exactly to the point of, you know, getting the old people like us, you know, to do all the Instagram and get these social media platforms up to speed, so that, and then we can give back. And those are things that are helpful.
Okay.
I love this reverse mentoring. I think it's so fabulous and important as well, because it does give that free flow of information between different value structures. You know, in my time we worked this way. Oh, now we don't. We don't. You know. Yeah.
We all need we should all get Zoomer mentors after this.
Yeah.
So I do want to end this discussion on a hopeful note. We have 5 minutes left, so time for one more question. And that would be, let's look forward to 10 years from now. And what would be the main development that you're hopeful of seeing in terms of the wealth and investment management industry being friendlier to female clients and more inclusive to female talent? What's kind of like the main thing that you'd like to see in a decade? I'll start with you, Georgie.
Well, in a decade, in some ways, I'd like not to be having this conversation, in the sense that, you know, we've done it. You know, Eureka, we've had the moment. You know, women, female clients can walk into any office and there's not going to be, you know, an unconscious bias, or somebody's not looking at them when they're sitting in the meeting room and they're looking at their, you know, their partner or their husband, or, you know. So in an ideal world, we won't be having this conversation. In possibly a more realistic world, we will still be having a bit of this conversation, but I hope it is a conversation that actually more people are having, and people are having across their firms, and they really have made that progress. It's a male conversation, it's a female conversation, it's to everyone. It's everyone's perspectives, but I think we'll do quite well over 10 years, and I'm sure this will be. Do you remember when we had a whole seminar about women in wealth? So.
Tamara, what about you?
She stole mine. I was going to say not to be talking about this. No, it's a good one. It's a good one. I'll just flip it on its head and do the other lens of it, is that I would love to see, because we do know it, if we look at women's pensions, they're not at the same level currently as men. If we track back and look at, you know, millennials, those coming through, they have a different attitude to longer term investing or funding their futures. I think that obviously I want to see it in the numbers, whether it's pensions, whether it's women more engaged in longer term investments. Also, so for me, I want to see it in the numbers, that there is a dramatic doubling on all of those in terms of the performance and engagement of women, and to hold ourselves on that as we go from here.
And Gabby, what about you?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to when we get to that, probably not quite 50-50, but running through the business, so at all levels. So we've got diversity and inclusion, and when, as Georgie said, not having this conversation. But also, I don't want to be having that conversation about whether someone is the best person for, well, I want to be having the conversation about being the best person for the job, but not in the context of we need diversity, and then the suggestion that maybe people have been appointed because of diversity or inclusion, and not because they're the best person. We want talent, we need talent, and that's what we need to nurture in all its forms, and it should drive itself through all the way through the business. So we're never going to be precisely 50-50, but 40-60, it could be 40-60 male to female. That's great, and it will always move a little bit, but that's what I'm looking forward to as well, particularly as we see the increase in female clients. And again, in 10 years, hopefully that'll be much nearer 50-50 as well. And also I want to see the female clients being more generally confident. So we have some very confident female clients with a great understanding of finance and what they want and what they're after, but the majority are not so confident. And I really want to see that piece coming through across all generations, that they're actually happy to have that conversation, happy to say when actually I don't understand, or that's not quite what I'm after. And we have that understanding of what they want, what they need to know, and we nurture and look after them just because that's what we do for everybody, not because they're female. So, yeah.
And finally, Patricia, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, the future it's all about digital technology, customization, and the interesting thing about it, and tying it into the female, is that as horrible as COVID has been, and the pandemic, and you know, disproportionately bad for women, the flip side is that technology has brought working from home, flexibility in the workspace, very acceptable. You start to see conversations with male clients with kids running in the background, and they're just letting them run in the background, as opposed to women shutting the doors and locking the, you know, is completely different. And so I think that flexibility, the digital customization is going to definitely help make it more acceptable and make it a better environment. But yeah, I think everybody has said it very eloquently. You know, the clients we need to be representative of our clients. And I think the younger generations are going to help us with this.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies. We're just about out of time. So thank you to everyone who joined us, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.